Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe. I'm a Forbes contributor covering social entrepreneurship and impact investing. And today's guest is a remarkable man, Mayor Ben McAdams of Salt Lake County, who has created the first of its kind impact investment opportunity for investing in homelessness, or the eradication, elimination, mitigation of homelessness. Mayor, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you, Devin.
Well, it is exciting for me to see this. Utah has an interesting reputation around homelessness, Salt Lake City, Salt Lake County especially, because we have been at different times, I think, well regarded in terms of our progressive efforts to mitigate, alleviate, reduce homelessness with housing first initiatives, et cetera. And yet, in Salt Lake City now, we're at a near crisis, or most people would agree we're in a crisis situation with homelessness and really a scary time. So we're thrilled that you would take a few minutes to come here. But you, somewhat independently of Mayor Biskupski in Salt Lake City, and then more collaboratively recently, you've been working on this for 2 years. And the Pay for Success initiative has really helped to catalyze part of this, but there's a lot going on. Let's start quickly, Mayor, with the Pay for Success piece of this. And we covered that well in the Forbes piece, so I want to move past that in this conversation, but let's start there. How does that Pay for Success initiative work with respect to homelessness?
So what we're looking at with this homelessness is we started gathering the data and trying to better understand our homeless system here in Salt Lake County. There's some data that really stood out to us. And one piece in particular is that of the individuals who are in our homeless shelter and in our homeless services, over 30% of them will also spend an average of 3 months each year in the Salt Lake County jail. So we just saw this incredible overlap between homeless shelter, jail, and street. And really the system didn't communicate very well to understand that what was happening is people were going from shelter to jail to the streets, to shelter to jail to streets, and just that cycle continually throughout the year. And what we saw in that was not only the human tragedy of people just cycling through these systems without any effectiveness, despite our efforts to fund correction services in the jail, and we're alleviating suffering in the shelter, we just saw that human tragedy occur over and over again. But then also we saw some taxpayer waste, that tax dollars that are funding programs in the jail or funding programs in the homeless shelter was not being put to the best use of having an effective outcome of helping somebody to become stable and overcome their crisis. And so we saw with that challenge, we saw an opportunity for a Pay for Success, that if we could reduce people bouncing from jail to shelter back and forth, there were taxpayer savings in that, and those taxpayer savings could be captured to actually fund the prevention, the intervention that would result in that reduced cycling through the systems. So that's where the Pay for Success started. It took us a period of time, well over a year, to gather the appropriate data, build the data system, start to build capacity within county government. We went through a procurement to find a provider who could meet our needs and select a provider, and working with the provider to pull this program together. And we're to the point now that we are almost ready to launch this program with impact investment. We have some philanthropic investment, impact investment, and then some CRA banks who are looking to invest in this. And if we indeed succeed and reduce the rate of individuals who are cycling through these systems repeatedly, then that'll trigger an obligation for Salt Lake County to pay, and we'll pay happily.
Well, this is an exciting place. Now, let's step back from Pay for Success just a little bit, and let's look broadly, a little more broadly, at the homeless situation in Salt Lake County and the things that you're going to be doing in the near future. It seems to me, even in just this last week, you started with a diversion program that seems to be a preamble to a broader, larger initiative that will be coming on later.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we've concluded, and Pay for Success was really some of the early part of this work, but one of the things that we've concluded is our system as it stands today is built, it's doing incredibly well the task that we gave it to do, which was to alleviate suffering by providing meals and beds at the lowest possible price. You know, I want a system that does something different than that. My ultimate goal is not to provide meals and beds. My ultimate goal is to help people not need a meal and not need a bed because they're more independent, more self-reliant because of the system. And so we have to retool that system. And so one of the things that we know we have to do, right now we have our main shelter sleeps over 1,200 people. There are great economies of scale in that if your goal is to provide meals and a bed. If your goal is to treat people like individuals, to diagnose their underlying root causes of homelessness and help to alleviate those challenges to help them to become more stable and more successful, the system's not built to do that. So one of our first recommendations is to recognize that we want to meet people where they are. We have women who are homeless with children because of domestic violence. They're in the same facility as a man who's homeless because he's violent and has been in and out of jail. We have an individual who is overcoming an addiction in the same facility as someone who is homeless because they've been selling drugs. So you put all those people together, economies of scale are great, the outcomes not so much. And so we're focusing on a system that is maybe retooled to these individual populations. All of them are redeemable. All of these people, I believe we can help. We can help to break the cycle of addiction. We can help families who are homeless due to domestic violence with treatment and employment options. We can help, there's treatment for all of these people. We can address the human tragedy, and we can also save tax dollars. But to do so, we have to have a system that recognizes individuals, that is looking to address the root causes of their crisis, and with the focus on helping them become more stable in the long term. So that's been the driving force.
The scariest and most hopeful part of your program seems to me to be closing that big facility and opening 4 smaller facilities that will hold fewer than half as many people, which means that your plan is to find somewhere else still for 700 people that are currently being cared for at the main shelter. Tell us about how that works in your mind.
Yeah, so that's absolutely right. So first of all, we're looking at 4 facilities of size no greater than 150 beds. So they'd be much smaller facilities. I think that enables us to be more targeted in the treatments that we provide to these individuals. So if we do that, we're looking at a capacity of about 550 beds among these 4 facilities. Some of them will be smaller than 150. But we would do kind of a bed-for-bed replacement and transition these 1,200 people in beds right now to these smaller facilities, but then try to also get people out of shelter, not by creating different shelter beds in different locations, but by improving services. So that's where Pay for Success comes in. We've got about 300 spots, 300 individuals that we hope to serve through the Pay for Success. If that's successful, we can further draw down the shelter population. What my commitment has been is that we will not arbitrarily close a facility and send hundreds of people to the street. That would be even worse than what we've got today. Those people also would not be served. We wouldn't be able to address their underlying root causes, but there would be human suffering in that as well, and we don't want to see that. So what my commitment is that we would, through new shelter beds and increased services like the Pay for Success programming we're providing, we would reduce the demand for the shelter of that large facility until it reaches 0. So it would also be an outcome focus. We're not, like I said, just going to arbitrarily come in and close the doors of a facility, but very much our goal is to reduce the need and reduce the demand for a 1,200 bed facility until that need is 0, and then we can close that facility. But it would be only to the extent that, at which we achieve our other goals.
Mayor, one of the things that I know people in the community worry about, and some are just passionate about this as I've talked to them, but they're concerned that if our homeless programs are too good, we will in effect create by importation, more homeless people. How do you address that concern?
Well, I think, what you worry about is people who can come to the system, no strings attached, get a free place to sleep and free meals. And this really is the system we have today. And I think what I'm proposing is transitioning to a new system where there are some strings attached. And those strings are, again, we are a community, a compassionate community. I hope that no one in our community goes hungry or without shelter. But we're going to attach some strings to that. If they want to have the best services that are available, they're going to have to meet us halfway. They're going to have to agree to participate in treatment. They're going to have to work to stay sober. And look, we'll understand that takes time and it's a process, but we want people to stay sober. We want them to be respectful of others who are in shelter, not disruptive of the environment within the shelter. And we want to see them progressing toward their own stability and self-reliance. So there are going to be some expectations. And if we have, the best system with no strings attached, simply just providing meals and a place to stay, I would worry about that. If our system's the best system because it weans people off of the need for support and gets them to independence and self-reliance, let us have the best system in the state, and let's get sick people healthy and living independently. And I think we can actually afford that.
Mayor, quickly, I want to ask you a couple of personal questions while we've got you. Obviously, as mayor of Salt Lake County, you are revered by many. But who do you look up to? Who inspires you as a role model?
Somebody who I've gotten to know over the last few years, who I think is an incredible role model for me, is Jim Sorenson. Jim Sorenson has been one of the leaders of impact investing, and he's worked with us in this pay for success, but in all the other areas. I see Jim, Jim came to impact investing when he was looking to help another community, a disadvantaged community in the hearing impaired, and came up with some technology that could help them to communicate with the rest of the world, and knew that if that technology were to go to scale to help everybody, 100% of the people who need it, you'd have to work impact investing and get a market response to that. And Jim figured out how to go 100% to scale with providing solutions to the hearing impaired. And Jim has taken his success off of that and his entrepreneurial success, not to live the easy life, but he's looking to solve other problems in the developing world and here in Utah. So as we've worked with Jim with the center that he's endowed at the University of Utah, they've been critical. We couldn't have this Pay for Success initiative without the work of the Sorenson Impact Center at the University of Utah to helping us gather the data, structure the randomized control trial and the rigorous evaluation that a Pay for Success will need, and pulling this together entirely. So Jim is a model to me to say, when I look at the work that I'm trying to do in homelessness or alleviating poverty or reforming the criminal justice system, I know that the work we do on the individual level is important, but I'm not satisfied with just helping a few dozen or a few hundred people. We want to go to scale. We want to see the needle move in Salt Lake County at scale. And in order to do that, it's going to take, as Jim has shown, partnerships with the private sector, the public sector, working with the philanthropic sector, and bringing those all together to bring in real empirically verifiable outcomes and interventions.
Now, Mayor, I'm not sure you're aware of that there is an election going on, but I think you're up for election right now.
I am.
You may have been distracted by that, but there's also a presidential election. And in that, one of the interesting things we've seen is a lack of any discussion about poverty in America. And I say lack of any, it's approaches zero discussion of what they will do about poverty. There's a lesson there, I think, and that is that Americans aren't as interested in poverty alleviation as maybe we should be, and that there isn't much to gain politically from solving homelessness. Why are you so focused on this?
Well, I think first of all, Utah has already led the way. Before I was mayor, with Utah's work with Housing First and addressing chronic homelessness, I think we've shown that we can do better than just alleviating suffering and being compassionate. I'm a compassionate person, and we're a compassionate state. I don't mean to minimize that, but Utah has shown with some of our homeless population in this chronically homeless category that we actually move the needle at scale and have almost eliminated chronic homelessness. Now, those people who were chronically homeless are better off today than they were before the state's intervention. They still have a way to go. We understand that that's a work in progress. But I do believe that Utah has shown the way, and we can show the way now with this persistently homeless population that we're looking at. And also child and family homelessness is an area where we can have a real impact. It's an area that I'm concerned about. I've started on this work a couple of years ago, and I had somebody who I knew growing up reach out to me and tell me that that somebody from my neighborhood was her and her child are living in the shelter today in crisis, and that the work is impacting real people that I know. And I'm a compassionate person, like I said, but to know that it's not just nameless faces, but it's somebody who I know and I grew up with, and it could just have as easily been me or my child when some of the circumstances that combine to put somebody in a situation where they need homeless services, it could affect any of us, or it could affect any of our loved ones. And to know that there's a real tie to this is something that's very motivating to me. But I do believe that while alleviating suffering is a noble goal, that we can do better. We can stretch further, and we can help people become and enjoy a greater degree of independence and self-reliance. And I think this work is important. It can become a national model for how we alleviate poverty and break the intergenerational cycle of poverty.
Great. Well, Mayor, we ask all of our guests for what we call an impact hack, a tip that would help us to do more good in the world. Certainly you're doing a lot of good. What is your tip? What is your impact hack?
Well, I think I would reach out to government leaders and say the importance of data is so critical. We didn't know what we didn't know before we started measuring it. So the importance of infusing all of our work in government with data, you may not know why or what the importance of the data is, but gather data, collect data, and make it available to the public. The ideas that are out there that young, bright minds and entrepreneurial minds might figure out a better way to do something because of the availability of data is so important. So we are trying to do this at Salt Lake County, and I would encourage other government leaders to gather data, methodically gather data, and share it with the public, because there are solutions out there. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And yet far too often we in government are investing in pounds of cure, or in reality pounds of Band-Aids, not cures, when there's an ounce of prevention that we may not see. And we can gather data and share that data with the public, and through Internet of Things type approach, somebody will help us figure out a way to impact human lives for the better and save tax dollars in the process.
Fantastic. That's a great tip. Great tip. Mayor, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. Before you go, how can people learn more about the Salt Lake County program and connect with you and your team?
So it's on our website, slco.org/mayor. You can connect with me by Twitter @Mayor Ben McAdams. Love to hear, love to talk more about what we're doing, or hear from anybody, any feedback that they might have.
Fantastic. Mayor, thank you so much for being with us today, and we wish you every success in eliminating homelessness in Salt Lake County.
Thank you, Devin.
All righty, let's do some good.